Welcome back to another episode of the Greencastle podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Kleck. We've got a great show for you. We have a great show every day. We never disappoint. But today, another exceptional guest on there. David Cuthbert from the Global Imprint is joining us. Dave is a Naval Academy graduate, former Navy EOD officer, multiple deployments, time in Iraq, defusing bombs. As if that's not enough, he takes his skill sets out and becomes CEO of a major telecom company, leaves that company, decides to go into the nonprofit side to help lead a nonprofit that is bringing clean drinking water on a global scale to impoverished nations, finally landing where he is today with the Global Imprint as the founder and CEO, helping companies find, define, and embrace something bigger than just the bottom line, helping them find that corporate social responsibility, that purpose. And we're really excited. Dave's got a laundry list of skill sets and experiences in leadership and in just helping folks be the best versions of themselves. So we're excited to have him on today.
This individuality stuff is a bunch of crap.
There's a reason why.
A master of innovation.
The key to this growing is you.
Any rational person would give up.
I can't disagree with that.
Make sure that we're not prisoners of our own experiences.
You need a team of great people.
We'll not tolerate a loser.
What they need is a common vision.
Helping organizations win one veteran at a time. This is the Greencastle podcast.
Hey, thanks for joining us today, man. I know you're busy. I know this coronavirus environment's got you busy, especially as a startup entrepreneur. Can you talk to us? Just take us through. We did the intro, but tell me a little bit about Global Imprint.
Yeah, John, thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always great to talk to you, so appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, interesting times for sure, especially for everybody really, but to be an entrepreneur at this time, to be an early stage business definitely complicates things, but there's still a great opportunity out there, and I think there's we're seeing a lot of opportunity for Global Imprint, quite frankly, as things continue to evolve and change. So Global Imprint, what we do is we work with companies and help companies design and implement sustainability strategies. We work with them on their philanthropic initiatives. We work with them on their ESG ratings and really help them.
And ESG, for people who don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, sorry about that. But environmental, social, and governance funds, if you will. So these are large capital funds that are developing around the world. And essentially, investors and banks and so forth are looking to invest these funds into companies that score really well as it applies to environmental sustainability, social responsibility, and good governance practices. So it's really important for companies to build this into their business operations, these initiatives, so that they have more access to these funds around the world. And these funds right now are sitting around $30 trillion globally, which is about 1/4 of the global capital available to companies. So it's not a small thing. And these have been, growing with momentum and accessibility over the years, but it's really reaching its peak. Now, we'll see how things change with COVID-19, but this remains a very important thing for companies to be aware of and to be working with. So that's what we do.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If I can break it down in simple terms for people who are listening and going, all right, so good governance and corporate social responsibility, we're talking about organizations, companies, or whatever, mostly for-profit companies who are doing more than just saying the bottom line is all that matters to me. Now we're talking about having more than just a monetary-driven purpose. Am I capturing that?
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, this has become way more important for companies over the last decade, as we all know. This is nothing new. It's corporate social responsibility and corporate philanthropy, but it's really all rising to the surface because of the growth of really these ESG funds. Let's break that down a little bit. Let's talk about what's actually happening in the market and why all this is actually coming to bear. And I would suggest that even now, in the context of COVID-19, like these issues haven't gone away. And it's going to be interesting to see how they evolve, but it's there's good reason to believe these things will become even more important going into the future, and we can get to that in a moment. But let's just talk about like what's actually happening in the market. And these are statistics. I'm going to cite a couple of statistics. These are statistics put out by Forbes. You can find them easily just by doing a basic search on the internet. But recent statistics say that 88% of consumers, when they buy a product, they care about the social causes that product stands for. So if they had an option to buy product A or product B, and they were both, from a performance standpoint, whatever it be, electronics to consumer-based products, whatever, if they had the option between those two products and one was aligned with a social cause, one wasn't, 88% of the time, they're going to choose that product that aligns with social cause. So this is happening across all kinds of markets. You're seeing it happen in many of the things that we all purchase. And I would, to our listeners and to even us, test it against ourselves. Would we make that decision? And the answer is yeah. It makes sense.
Can
so
you
starting to pay attention?
I'm sorry. Can you give me an example? Just again, I'm trying to think. It's put some context to it. I don't know if we're talking about a gallon of milk or if we're talking about a new car. What would be like an example that somebody can relate to and go, oh, you know what? I actually did buy this, or I did favor this thing because of like, what's a company who's done a really good job of marketing their social cause?
Yeah, well, there's probably the banner is Patagonia, right? So every single thing you buy, their whole shtick is when you buy it, you're actually buying this product and not doing as little harm to the entire supply chain when you buy that product. And they want you to buy that product and like never buy another product again. Yeah. Right. So that product is made with such quality and in such responsibility of its supply chain that they want to sell that thing to you once and not have to sell it to you 10 times. Right. And so, they've been a driver behind B corporations, and they've been a driver behind sustainability initiatives and so forth. So that's a great example. But you can walk into your grocery store and stand in the egg aisle, right? You're going to see eggs, and then you're going to see free range organic eggs. And if the prices are relatively the same, you're going free range organic because, the chickens are treated better. And so this goes from high level product all the way down to the choices you make every single day in the grocery store. And what we're seeing in markets is that messaging or that real alignment to good work, we'll call it, or responsible work, is becoming a front of mind issue for consumers. And nearly every single thing we purchase, from eggs to fleece to even cars. Now we're talking about hybrids and Teslas and these cars that aren't as dependent upon fossil fuels. And we're doing this not because they're necessarily cheaper. We're doing this because we care because we don't want to damage the environment, or we care about climate change and don't want to be consuming more and more fossil fuels at the rates we used to. So again, it applies to almost everything. We're seeing buildings, right, with energy efficiency, like that really matters because of global climate change. We're looking for alternative sources of energy. This is applying to nearly every aspect of what we're purchasing. So that's really a major driver in the market, is just consumer choice. The second real major driver is employee choice, the labor market. Now, this is obviously a really unique and different labor market that we're seeing today with COVID-19, right? Mass layoffs and so forth. But generally speaking, and I still think, again, this would apply, people really do care about the brands they work for. They want those brands to be responsible brands. And the trends have been very strong up until now, that given the choice, again, and if monetary sort of levels were even equitable, but people have actually said, we would work for less if the brand or the company was that much more responsible, if I felt like I was working for a cause essentially bigger than myself. And the statistics are pretty high in this, especially in the millennial generation, who I think is really changing the labor market. And now the millennial generation is the largest labor force in the United States. So this is a pretty major thing.
You said we've seen that trend. So you and I are Gen Xers, and then and we're actually sort of on the senior end of the labor force by and large. You're saying, and then we see that trend with millennials, and now even Gen Zers coming in. You're saying that what we're seeing is that people will come in, and I've seen articles that have suggested that that's part of the interview process from the prospective employee. Like they're doing their due diligence on the company, going, nah, this company is, they have terrible reviews about their not just about how they treat their employees, but about that again, this term that I don't know that everybody's familiar with, corporate social responsibility. What do they stand for other than just, like Enron, we're just making money and we're just, greed and capitalism, or just the monetary, just the bottom line. What else are they standing for? And you're saying that's a trend that we're seeing by and large with the workforce coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a book written called Purpose Economy, and they say that, millennials are jumping around job to job trying to find that. And on average, they're in their 20s, they're holding 7 different jobs just in their 20s. It's pretty astounding, right? American business in 2018 lost $11 billion just in employee turnover. And we all know this. For any of us who run a business, like one of the most expensive evolutions we can go through is to lose an employee. How do you retain that talent? I mean, talent that you've invested in, you've trained, you've got them up to speed on your product and so forth. You have to engage them in the work. They have to believe in the work. They want to be a part of something that matters. They want to be part of something of this bigger stories with social responsibility, but also good governance. So if we talk about the ESG, the G stands for good governance. They want equitable pay. There has to be, pay scales that are fair for everybody. They can't have biases built into them. That's part of the good governance structure. And so companies who are leading the way, quite frankly, it's kind of interesting. We're still talking about that issue, but it's still a real thing. People want to work for companies that are fair, that are honest, and that are a part of, being good citizens of the world at a corporate level. And so that's greatly influencing the way that companies operate, the way that companies talk about their products, the way they talk about their brand and how they engage their audience, which also includes their employees. So, you have the consumer market shifting. It's been shifting for a long time. You have the labor market that's certainly pushing a lot of momentum. And now you have these ESGs, which is your capital market, environmental social governance markets. So that's happening. So what banks are saying, if you meet these certain standards, you have access to higher levels of capital. And beyond that, Merrill Lynch put out a report not too long ago that says those companies are actually starting to outperform companies with low ESG ratings. Because, well, maybe, and I'm presuming a bit here, maybe because they're able to retain their talent, or they're able to engage customers and increase customer loyalty. And that's me presuming, but they're starting to see metrics that actually say that highly rated ESG companies are doing very, very well in the market.
We don't go back to fact finder on this podcast. We'll just take everything you say as the gospel truth. You heard it here first, folks. That's it. That's the truth right there.
Yeah, that's fine. Shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn if you disagree. But there are a lot of stats that
your inbox is just going like this right now.
Yeah. Hey, listen, this is an open dialogue, right? But I mean, nobody would argue, I think, that all of these things are happening. There's enough evidence out there to say that. But what does that have? What does that create? It creates companies that need to be very self-aware and very conscious of these issues, right? And at the end of the day, that's what we're really talking about. And so that, going full circle here back to what we do, we help companies, global imprint partners with companies to develop growth strategies that are very aware of these issues. And there are a lot of different things that we can do for organizations, and we do for organizations to help them on that growth path, to do it in a very mindful, aware, and sustainable way. And I think it's a really exciting space.
I'm sorry. Would it be accurate to say then that not just doing it, like, so what you guys do at Global Imprint, you're not just helping companies, because if a company does it but nobody knows about it, it's like the tree falling in the woods, right? So are you guys part culture development, part PR firm, part operations? Like, you're helping them from that if you do have a purpose that you stand for and you're XYZ Corporation, if you're promoting it, but you're not actually living it on the inside, there's going to be a disparity, and the people on the inside are going to say, there's some bullshit here that the company's not really living up to their dreams, and that's a PR issue, right? But on the flip side, if you are doing it but nobody knows about it, that's a problem too, because as you said, your customers want to buy in. There's an allegiance, a loyalty with companies that are known to be doing things. So are you guys helping them both on the inside and then also projecting and letting it be known what they're doing?
Yeah, exactly. We're sort of a full service partner in that we create all that content, all that storytelling that actually supports the brand story. And we think it's really important. And I'll go back, as you know, before, founding Global Imprint, I was the CEO of an international water organization, Wine to Water. And we did clean water initiatives in over 40 countries around the world. And to do that, we partner with companies all the time. And I would get that question from corporate leadership always. Should we tell this story? We feel like it's a little self-serving. What is the best way to share a story like this? And companies struggle with that. And and I appreciate that self-awareness. They want to do it and they want to do it well, and they don't want to do it in a way that just sort of pats themselves on the back. Yeah. My position on it is you absolutely have to tell that story. One, you're doing it. Two, it encourages others to do it. It encourages other good work, right? And thirdly, we can do it, and we can do it very well. We can do it in a tasteful manner. We can do it in a dignified manner. We can be honest about what the work is, not only the successes of that work, but what were the challenges of that work. And I think that that's the kind of engagement people are really looking for. And then lastly, we become advocates of a cause. People need to know, like in the global water crisis context, that there's a global water crisis, and there's things that people and corporations can do, and we can use those stories to tell that kind of, to share that sort of information and news. So to that point, that's what Global Imprint does, help our clients tell that story. But I would encourage, all of you corporate leaders out there who might be listening to this, share those stories. You just have to share them very thoughtfully and very well. But I think it's very important.
You mentioned, and I think it's an interesting point for folks who aren't in that realm. You said we help partner folks, the corporations, with folks who are doing good work. So is it accurate again so are you guys mostly helping corporations internally create their own purpose and create maybe a division or something, or are you bringing in other organizations that are already doing good work out there with a for-profit company who goes, hey, we're looking for a good cause to get behind, and you're helping marry them up and create an alignment between them? Is that sort of what your bread and butter?
That's exactly right. So we'll come in and we'll do a full assessment for a company and say, okay, like, where do you guys stand? What are your core values? What are your business development initiatives? Who are the core audiences you're trying to speak to? We'll do a full assessment of all of those things. And once we have that, we really know what the company is all about, what they want to do, where they're trying to go, and who they're trying to speak to. We have a global database based on our team at Global Imprint has connections around the world. We've all done international work in many, many countries. So what we'll do is partner the best organizations doing the best work as it aligns to the values and the direction of the business, and make sure that connectivity happens at a very high level. And then, we manage that relationship so the business can stay focused on its business, whether it be being a law firm or civil engineering firm or industrial firm, doesn't really matter, but that's what they do best. The global nonprofits do their work really best. And we make sure that connectivity and that relationship is in place and managed and grows in a really healthy way for everybody's benefit along the way. So that's an element of our service as well.
You started alluding to your background. You're a Navy guy, former EOD officer, then went to the corporate side, then went to the nonprofit side. So I think you really have a unique perspective. And for folks who tune in, I think this is and for anybody who's listening, I've known Dave for a long time, and I don't think there's anybody out there who has a more diverse background that allows him to speak to that for-profit, nonprofit, military side. Can you walk us through just sort of your journey, however deep you want to go? It's starting from your time in the Navy to like all your varied experiences and how that landed you in this position, and why corporate social responsibility is your passion today.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate the question. Because I do find myself in this unique seat, like as you're sort of indicating, having these different experiences and being able to draw together different experiences of my own and a lot of resources in a very large network to do good work. And at the end of the day, that's what we really, and when I mean good work, like work that is impactful to people, environment, planet, and so forth. And that's my passion for all of this. For me, that started back at my very beginning of my career at the Naval Academy. Went to Navy, graduated with an economics degree, and I was always a member of sports teams. I love teams, love that whole environment. Played soccer at Navy. So when I graduated, I was really looking for the next team environment and found that in the EOD community, as you had said. So EOD is explosive ordnance disposal. We're the bomb squad of the Navy. As you know, your community, spec war community, EOD community are very close. Did a lot of work with spec war guys along the way, and deployed quite a few times in Middle East and Africa. That was my core operating area. Spent a lot of time in Iraq, Horn of Africa, throughout the Middle East, in about 14 different countries in that region. And I just love the field. I love being out there with my team, doing high-level missions, being well trained and very well coordinated, and being in that environment was really special to me. But I left the Navy at the end of 2006 and joined another startup. And what drew me to the startup environment was, again, the team. I really just loved the idea of being on a small team, trying to do something audacious and awesome. And at that point in time, it was cloud communications. We were selling cloud before anybody was talking about cloud. And that was exciting and a great ride. Took that, helped lead that company until 2014.
There's an irony when a guy says, I was diffusing bombs over in Iraq. And then he's like, I was selling cloud. That was exciting. Everything's relative, right?
To the point. Yeah. Well, to the point, it was always for me about the team. It was about being on it with a group of people trying to pull something off. And what we were doing in 2006, 7, 8, 9 on the cloud side was we were these startups, and there was a few of us around the country, but we were disrupting the telecommunications industry. Our biggest competitors were AT&T, Verizon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, like all these cloud products that were coming. Yeah. Not even only the biggest companies in our sector, they were the biggest companies in the world, many of them. So, I thought that was very fun, and we enjoyed it. And we actually did quite well with that. And so did that until 2014. And then, as you indicated, I left that sector and was looking for my next gig. I actually thought I was going to stay in technology, and I came across this on LinkedIn. I came across Wine to Water, which was this international water organization in North Carolina. And I was living outside of Philly at the time in South Jersey, and saw this thing on LinkedIn, and it was this posting for the CEO of this organization. I found it fascinating because the first 7 or 8 bullets were all about international field experience, which I had done nearly a decade of in the Navy. And then the second half of that job description was organizational development experience, which I had just done, another 8 or 9 years, in technology. And then I had this mission for helping people get clean water who didn't have it. And man, that really changed me. That really changed the direction of my life, was that element there, which was, hold on a second, I could apply all of my different experiences to this and really benefit people. And I helped run that organization for 5 years, a little over 5 years. Wine to Water's done provided water for way more than 1 million people globally. We established offices in 4 countries, so I really understand what it takes to work in very difficult environments. And as that evolved, and I was looking to take my next step in my career, this role, which was the culmination again of my corporate experience, my international nonprofit experience, my business strategy experience, and bringing all that to bear in this market is an opportunity I just thought was really interesting. And again, since I started this company in 2019, the world's changed, right? The world's changed in the last 60 days, but I still remain very bullish on this. I really do believe that, the world needs really good work. I think even more so as we come through this and out of this COVID-19 experience. And I just, I'm really grateful to be in the spot I am and to work with the companies I do.
What does the world look like for corporate social responsibility coming out of, because, right, I mean, coming out of COVID, because, right, maybe companies had a lot more free capital to invest in corporate social responsibility or into that cause. Now we're talking about, I mean, the unemployment rates through the roof, right? So that free capital, how do you pivot? How does Global Imprint, how do you pivot, or how do companies pivot to still be able to meet that drive, that purpose that the employees want to have? And we're seeing that a lot today, right? You're seeing all the news covered. Today is April 24th, right in the middle of COVID. We're actually already maybe even on the downhill slide a little bit as states are talking about opening. But the news is riddled with, and social media is riddled with just good news stories about, honoring the healthcare workers. So they're finding a way, and maybe more so now than ever, people have a desire, like, man, I'm trapped in my house. I want to do something. So how do corporations do that? What does your field or your industry look like going forward out of this?
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental question for all of us, not only for Global Imprint, but I think like every single person running a business, I don't care if it's public or private or whatever level, has got to be asking this question. Like, what's important for the way that I run my business as I come out of this? To me, and what I think we're seeing, to the points that you're making, I absolutely believe people are really asking hard questions about not only the way they run their business, but how they run their life, right? And I'm asking questions about how am I going to change my behaviors? Do I need to get on airplanes as much, or can I do more business over video call? One, it's a better carbon footprint for myself, and Global Imprint, we've committed to being carbon positive, actually, meaning we're going to offset more carbon than we actually produce as a business. We call it climate positive. We're going to have to make decisions like that, and we can make decisions like that. But every company is got to ask these questions. And I think to the point that you're asking, I really do believe that the more intentional companies coming out of this, the more intentional organizations, meaning those who are truly self-aware, connected with audiences, connected with and being empathetic in this new environment, and we'll call it even the new economy, because I really think the economy is changing right in front of our eyes. They're still going to matter the most. I mean, you can even see, I saw a commercial the other day, and I'm not promoting any brands here, but Miller Lite, they just donated $1 million, which may not be a lot of money to them, right? Truthfully, but they donated $1 million to bartenders and servers who, lost their jobs. It's called the virtual tip jar or whatever. And I don't know exactly how that money gets perpetuated, so I'm not advocating for it, but it's a really interesting concept, though. They're donating money into their audience, as they should. And people who are hurting right now in that service industry are really hurting right now, and they're trying to help in that way. But it's interesting because if they can be a brand, and I will trust them for their altruism, but if they can be a brand that is altruistic through this environment, when those people come back online, aren't they going to want to pour Miller Lite beers, and isn't that good business for them anyhow? As they're pushing beer out to their client, I would think so. If somebody's asking at the bar, what should I drink? Miller Lite. They did us a solid during COVID-19, right? And there you go. They just made a sale on behalf of that brand. So they're creating brand ambassadors right now. But I don't necessarily mean to indicate that it's just philanthropy. I think philanthropy is very important, but at the same time, I think you can meet these ESG standards as you look at how you run your business, as you look at the responsibility of your supply chain, as you look at the way that you engage your company, it's just not about writing checks. It's about actually how you run your business in awareness, in sustainability. You know, we're going climate positive. That's not expensive for us, actually. You'd be surprised at actually how cheap that is to be climate positive. And that was an easy decision for us because it was part of our core values. But I think it still says something about the way that we want to run our business in the future. And I think everybody could be looking at the way they want to run their business and what they want their brands to stand for. And I think that will matter a lot coming out of this. I don't think everybody's going to race back to crushing the bottom line. I think people are going to race back to, we got to be a relevant and real and empathetic business in this new economy. That's my take on it anyhow. And I think that's supported by a lot of the conversations and a lot of the advertising we're actually seeing right now.
What I heard in your Miller Lite example, again, we're not advocating for Miller Lite or one way or another, but is that when done, you know, and right, so business folks, there's going to be some business folks listen to that and go, hey, that's touchy-feely, that's great, but at the end of the day, if it's not helping in my bottom line, then it's hurting it, right? But what I heard in that Miller Lite example is that if you take a long-term look at it, if you actually have, and if you take a creative look at this corporate social responsibility, there actually are, like as you talked about, bartenders who may have an affinity for Miller Lite, or owners who go, hey man, when I was down, they picked me back up, and you're right, maybe $1 million wasn't anything for them, but the fact that Miller Lite did it and then made it known and then invested in, hey, we want folks to know what we're doing. That may actually, there might be a metric that might be hard to measure, but there may be a loyalty that's created just by something, as you said, $1 million might be a drop in the bucket for them, but they did it for a group of individuals who are hurting right now. So for anybody listening, I wonder if there's and maybe you can elaborate on that there really is a measurable benefit from an economic standpoint, that it's not just touchy-feely making people feel better about who the company they work for, but you really can have an effect on the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's critically important, and that's one of the things we are very focused on, making sure that we're not just, this is not a touchy-feely issue for us. It is actually a business development issue.
Yeah.
The reason I say it that way, because even if you talk about it in the context of sustainability, well, what's actually sustainable? Well, good business is sustainable. Profitable business is sustainable. If you're not profitable, you're not sustainable. So all of these things, all of these initiatives that companies are taking on, actually have to make sense in the context of their business strategy. And so, you know, what we're advocating for is, and whether they're working with us or just businesses making decisions in general, what we're advocating for is that businesses don't only become about that bottom line at all costs. Absolutely not. What we're advocating for, and what we're also not advocating for, is businesses only being about, well, the planet at the cost of their own business. Not advocating for that either, right? What we're advocating for is let's develop a very strong bottom line. Let's develop good business development practices in a way that's socially, environmentally responsible. Because in the long run, if you really want to look at like being around for 5, 10, 15 years, we actually think they are the fundamental building blocks right now to long-term, healthy, sustainable growth business. If you're not in that realm, if you're not talking about these kinds of issues, if you're not socially responsible, if you're not, you know, fair pay is not in the DNA of your company, if your social awareness is lacking, if your environmental awareness is lacking, and you're just, you know, destroying the environment behind you in your supply chain, you're going to actually struggle to compete in the next 5 to 10 years. So this isn't just a touchy-feely issue like you're indicating. It is a true competitive issue for companies, which is kind of interesting and very refreshing for all of us, because it's like, oh, okay, a competitive advantage is actually environmental stewardship or social responsibility or good governance. Yes, that's awesome. Now we're talking about real fundamental change. And that's what I think gives everybody a lot of hope that we can do business better going in the future. And if COVID's done anything, man, as you and I've had conversations about this, it's a really interesting time because it's given us all this collective pause. There's like almost nothing else that I could have ever dreamed of creating a collective pause like this for everybody at the same time to take a step back and say, all right, what's different about the future as opposed to the way that I did things in the past? Like, this is the perfect opportunity to be asking these kinds of questions and building a stronger brand in the future. And I think it's those who take advantage of this are going to find themselves in a really advantageous position going forward.
Well, I love the way you conclude that. You're right. It really is going to be advantageous, and people will see that, right? Especially, I feel like we've hit the reset button on what we consider important, and what we value. And maybe we always valued those things, but now coming out of this, you're like, well, you know what? Time with my family, man. But boy, that was, I'm excited for the kids to go back to school. I'm excited not to be locked down with them.
We all are.
But yeah, that's a whole different discussion.
Right.
but I will have valued that time and
for sure.
Anyway, hey, before we wrap up, we are a veteran focused organization. So we don't just go out and interview just veterans, but because you had such an interesting experience, you mentioned a lot of things throughout the conversation. Working in small teams. When you went to the corporate side, you were so excited, and you were excited by the challenge of being innovative. How much of this is sort of one of those softball questions, but you've mentioned as I think a recurring theme throughout, even just going on your own, leaving the comfort and the safety of having a steady paycheck at Wine to Water and deciding to go out on your own. How much of what you did and you learned in the military has laid the foundation for where you are today?
Yeah, man, it's a softball question, but it's one of those you could answer in a million different ways because my military experience, it was everything. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting where I am today. I wouldn't have had the experiences that I've had. I mean, without, certainly it would have had a different path or whatever that might look like. But for me, my military experience, it was fundamental to shaping the way that I see things, the way that I think about things, the way I think about leadership. I was very fortunate to be mentored by incredible leaders in the military. And I was, going to combat is an interesting experience because, there's so many theoretical books about leadership and there's all these things that we can just study about leadership. But then when you see it applied in a high stress, life or death environment, and then you really see what it's all about. We've had all these classes, you've done all these things, and then there it is. Like, it's really important. And you could apply that same thing, like, to that wartime type leadership to right now, like what's happening in COVID-19. And you're seeing the leadership medal right now. And so, I think for me, having seen such great leadership, been around great leadership, both in peacetime environment and wartime environment, in business growth environment when everything's going great, to environments right now, it's all really the same. It comes down to principle-based leadership. And I really, attribute that to my military experience and my academy days, my special operations days, all were cumulative in developing me in my leadership. And at the end of the day, I think being very thoughtful, really evaluating things 360 degrees, being able to see the mission inside the fog of war, and being very focused on that mission. These are elements that I've drawn from my military experience that I still use every single day today. So I couldn't be more appreciative of my service experience and the leadership I was around. It's been fundamental to my life.
You said you've had some really good mentors. What separates? You've obviously had a lot of mentors throughout your life. What separates those good ones? What makes those memorable for leaders that are listening in today going, I want to be good. I want to leave a legacy of having made people or made the organization better than how I found it. What makes, in your mind, what makes those mentors stand out? The good ones from the mediocre ones.
Yeah, it's a word that maybe we didn't hear around the military very much, but if you really think about it, I think if you think about it, I think it's a word that existed a lot, which was empathy. It's not a word we would throw around in our teams very much, right? But if you really look at the best, because it sounds soft and it sounds.
What do you need, a hug?
Exactly, right. And the only easy day was yesterday and all that stuff. It's like. But if you look at the best leaders, like the best leaders have been around, they understand the mission, but they understand where their guys are. And I'm not talking about just like with their training and their equipment, but like where they are, like between the years, like what's going on with those guys and how do I get those guys to accomplish that mission and being able to connect that. Same today, right? People are afraid, people are scared, people are unsure. How are we leading with like, this is what we need to do as a business, but this is where the mental and emotional state of my people are. And how do I get those things to connect? And leaders need to be very, very aware of how to do that. And it can't just be, well, this is the mission and forget where their people are. They will leave those people behind them. Right, and this is not an easy one for me. Like I really have to fight for this on a regular basis.
That idea of like, suck it up, Buttercup. This is your mission. That's sort of the leadership ideas of yesteryear, right? And we're moving to a much more empathetic.
It is, and that can be applied, but I think it can be applied in very short spurts, right? Sure. It can't be the sustained posture of leadership. But if a moment requires that, and somebody needs a swift kick in the ass, like right now, that needs to happen. But yeah, I think that empathy is, and if I look at the best leaders, like they didn't compromise the mission, but they were able to work with where their people were to get them there and do that very, very well and motivate them to do it at a high level. And I would say one more thing. I equate leadership to service. As leaders, I think our responsibility is to making sure that our people feel secure in their role, like we've got their back, and they need an opportunity to succeed. And if we can give them those two things, we give them the security of their role, meaning like, hey, we prepared you for this and you can do this, and you've got all the tools you need to succeed. We as leaders have largely done our job, and we've set people up for significant success, which ultimately means the leader's success. So, I think sometimes we fail because leaders make it about ourselves and these people are there to support my success. Totally wrong mentality. And I think that's a bit flawed. So, there's a couple of things I lean on, but I definitely draw from my military experience.
Hey, real quick before we go, where can folks find you on the interweb, on social media? Where can folks find out about Dave or about the Global Imprint?
Yeah, thanks, John. We hang out a lot on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find our content. Just find me, David Cuthbert, or DJ Cuthbert on LinkedIn, and Global Imprint on LinkedIn as well, but also Global Imprint on Instagram is another platform we leverage quite a bit as well. So please check us out there and reach out if you have any questions for us or want to continue this conversation in any way, shape, or form. We'd love to do that. So I appreciate the opportunity.
And it's globalimprint.com?
Yes, theglobalimprint.com.
Theglobalimprint.com. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today, man. I appreciate it. It's been a great opportunity to hear about, and for folks who don't know about corporate social responsibility, but in fact, we do know what it is because we live it and breathe it. We buy products, we buy services because of it. But it's really cool to hear a little bit pull the curtain back a little bit on why corporations do it and how it benefits. And hopefully our leaders have really pulled some good stuff out of it. So thanks for joining us today, man.
Thank you, John. I really enjoyed the conversation. All the best to you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Greencastle podcast. Please be sure to give us a like, a thumbs up, a share. You can find us at greencastleconsulting.com/podcast or on all the major podcast channels and the social media channels, including our YouTube channel. Thanks very much. We'll see you on the next episode.